Hello and welcome along to the latest episode of Rovers Chat. I'm joined as ever by Robbie Andrews of Radio Sheffield. Robbie, how are we doing?
Yeah, very well, Ricky. Thank you.
Good stuff. We may as well get straight into it then. Reading, I wasn't there, but you were last Saturday. Obviously, a 1-1 draw down at the Select Car Leasing. Is that what it's called nowadays? Select Car Leasing Stadium. Just tell us your thoughts on probably the performance more than anything, because certainly lacking, weren't it, against Northampton the week prior? So how did they fare?
Yeah, it was an improved performance. Rovers looked a lot more solid and more difficult to play against. I think the changes that Grant made, Broadbent came back in and Luke Molyneux came back in, sort of gave it a bit more of a familiar look to it. I think the changes he made prior to Northampton left the team looking a little bit unusual, with players like Ajayi getting a rare start and things like that. So the team looked a lot more familiar. I think getting themselves ahead in a game that there were unlikely to be many goals. And I think Rovers and Reading were in the bottom 6 or 7 for goals scored in League One. So it was always going to be, the odd goal if either team were going to win it. They'd had a couple of chances either side of half time through Molyneux, who did look more himself at the weekend, getting at players and getting into good areas as well. So I think it was a deserved lead. Great to see Sharp back among the goals. He enjoyed it as well against his old club. I think there were certainly no love lost. I think that's on both sides as well. So worked so hard to get themselves in front. I think the manner of the goal they conceded was frustrating. I know Grant said afterwards that the goalkeeper had sort of suggested there was a deflection on the way through. I think it's still one of those that, if he faces that shot 10 times, he'd be hoping to save it 8 or 9 out of 10. So a frustrating goal to concede. And I think had Rovers held on to that lead for a little bit longer, maybe gone 15, 20 minutes and right into the latter stages of it, they probably would have come away with 3 points. As it is, looking at it, taking a step back, a point on the road is a good result. Could have been all 3, but it stopped the rot in terms of the run they'd been on recently.
Yeah, you mentioned that, obviously, TLT, another... we've got to put it down as an error again, I guess, haven't we? I know he's kind of tried to make an excuse, if you like, with the deflection, but you've watched it a few times and not sure about that.
Yeah, it wasn't an obvious deflection. Even at the time, there was no clear nick. And even if there was, I think the distance between the ball and the goalkeeper, there was enough time to readjust. He got there. He'd almost done the hard work in getting there, but somehow it's sort of gone through him a little bit, and that can happen, in any game, but also when you maybe not as confident as you were 5-6 weeks ago for any player, really. I think Grant said that there were multiple errors leading to the goal, a misplaced pass, slow to react in different areas. You invite the player on and almost invite him to shoot, and then it ends up in the back of your own net. So again, maybe just slightly slow to react. And I think we sort of said afterwards that it was probably, a highlight of, in Rovers terms, of the step up, that in League Two, you might get away with that. In League One, you won't get away with it, even against a team in Reading who were struggling a little bit coming into it. I know they won on the Tuesday night prior, but they themselves are sort of languishing in that mid to lower table, aren't they? So not a team full of confidence, as we've seen since. They've sacked Noel Hunt now, haven't they? So clearly a team who were there for the taking, really, but errors defensively in terms of the goal almost let Rovers down, because for the most part, I struggle to really remember any clear-cut chances that Reading had. I think a couple of efforts from distance in the first half. Yeah. There was a chance for the big number 9, whose name I said enough on Saturday to not have to put myself through again on this one. But I think just after they'd equalised, he got in front of his man at the near post and shot just wide. But even towards the end, there wasn't really any sort of worries for Rovers. The game almost just petered out, really, into a 1-1 draw.
Yeah, like you say, it's an improvement in terms of performance, and it's kind of a rot stopper, weren't it? And then the downside of that is that it's another game where they haven't won. Obviously, this winless run is going to exceed 2 months in the league, isn't it? Obviously, we'll move on to the cup game in a bit, but it's 1 win in 9 now, isn't it? And it is that mini rut. I mean, when does it become a proper rut? I guess when it goes into double figures, it's they're just in a tough period, aren't they, right now?
Yeah, they are. And I think the key, I suppose, to getting yourselves out of it is, first and foremost, making yourselves difficult to beat, because Rovers have been too easy to play against, which is I'm sure an issue that Grant McCann has been trying to figure out, because a lot of these players are the same ones that won League Two last season. You think back to the home games against Burton, Wimbledon, Northampton, games where Rovers have been ahead and only taken 1 point from a possible 9, which is, it's head scratching. I think he described the draw at Reading as a building block. So if you can go and beat Crewe and get on a bit of a run in the league, then you look back at that and think, okay, that's where it turned, and that performance was a sort of the catalyst for what followed. It has to be backed up with a similar type of performance at the weekend. And I think, away from home in League One, a point is usually classed as a good one, isn't it? No matter the circumstances. But it is a worry that Rovers are struggling to win games. If they'd have gone a goal up in League Two last season, or even at the start of this campaign in League One, you'd have backed them to go on and win the game. But there's a few occasions more recently where they've gone a goal up and not been able to see it through. Now, is that an issue mentally as much as it is physically? Probably. If you took it sort of looking at the law of averages, it's probably more a mental thing than a physical thing. Rovers are clearly good enough to get results at this level, but for one reason or another, it's not quite happening at the moment. Yeah,
and I think, playing into that, obviously your interview with Grant afterwards, where he kind of mentioned the fact that he said, we've taken a lot of abuse and stick over the last few weeks. But then he says, obviously, that kind of fuels him on, certainly. Do you think some of that's been warranted, perhaps? I mean, we've talked about the run and some of the basic errors as well, really. It's one of those, you've got credit in the bank. We all know that, what job he's done and what the job these players have done. But yeah, is it just, I think someone made a really good point. I can't remember who it was last week on Football Evan, about if they'd have had a mixture of, win 2, lose 1, because they had such a good start, and then it's kind of flipped on its head, hasn't it? The running form. You look at where they are in the table, 12th. I think most people would have took that, wouldn't they? But the fact that it's kind of been up there and then, completely flipped on its head kind of gives it a different feel.
Yeah, and I think everybody would have taken where Rovers are at the moment, mid-table. If they were to finish there at the end of the campaign, people would say that's a pretty solid return to League One. I think Grant, touching on the stick, perhaps, that him and the team have received, he is that sort of person who will thrive on it and almost love to prove people wrong. I think there were stages last season where Rovers weren't pulling up any trees or being overly spectacular in the early exchange of the season, but was still there or thereabouts. And he was always saying, wasn't he, it's about where you finish, not where you start. So, the proof will be in the pudding at the end of the season where Rovers are. I don't think, when he was talking about the criticism that's come on board, I don't think much of it has been towards him, in truth. I think he has got enough credit in the bank where Rovers fans trust him. The club trusts him. Everybody, that work with him, fully aware what he's capable of at this level in particular. I don't think any of it is doubting his ability to get results. I think some of it has been towards players, which again is not really what you want to see. And I think there are opportunities for players to prove fans wrong as well, because there might be opinions that have already been made on certain players. But yeah, I think he is the sort of manager that will thrive on getting things right.
Absolutely, and kind of a nice change of pace into this weekend. Crewe, team from the division below, we'd expect changes, wouldn't you? And like you said there, an opportunity for Olasanya, just one name to pluck out of there. This could be a big game for him.
Yeah, and he did look lively when he came on, albeit without that real end product. But there were a couple of occasions against Reading where he got in behind, did everything that he'd been asked of, really, and getting on the shoulder of a tiring defender. But then once he got the ball, you could see maybe a lack of confidence again and lack of real belief that he could maybe cut inside and score a goal, or cut inside and find a teammate. There are a lot of players who've had to bide their time and wait. The goalkeeping situation, again, is an interesting one. Does he stick with Lototala and aim to get him a bit more momentum? Or, as we've seen in cup competitions gone by, does he go back to Ian Lawler and he's tried and tested in the cup? It'll be an interesting one, that. There are several players who need games. Jay McGrath's been in and out. He could do with a bit of football under his belt. But I think for the attacking third, you're looking at Brandon Hanlon, again, not even involved in the squad. On Saturday, he was doing some running on the pitch afterwards. So clearly fit and ready when called upon. But yeah, interesting to see how that sort of is displayed on Saturday. Does he change the whole front line? Does he just add one or two in? Who knows? But yeah, looking forward to a good old-fashioned cup tie.
Absolutely, yeah. You just knew it was going to be away, didn't you? I think the show before we did, we were looking at the prospects of who they could get, and I think we kind of resigned ourselves to the fact that it's going to be away. I mean, it's a mad quirk of fate that however many cup ties whether it's the trophy, the FA Cup or the Carabao, have been away from home, but at least it's not a million miles away.
Yeah, it's familiar setting, isn't it, for Rovers to go to Crewe? They had a good win there in the playoffs a couple of seasons ago. Of course, it all went wrong after that. But yeah, Crewe away, it's a game where probably Crewe will be looking at it and thinking, well, Rovers aren't on the best of runs. They might fancy their chances of causing a bit of a mini upset now that there's a league between the two teams. But yeah, Rovers always seem to be away from home, don't they, in any cup competition? It's bizarre, really, the run that they're on. But Grant does have a good record at this club in particular of getting them into the big rounds, the money spinning rounds, where all of a sudden your Premier League clubs are all in there. I think 2 of his 3 seasons with Rovers across the 2 spells, he's reached the 4th round of this competition at least. So he's got the track record of getting it done. These are the hard yards, really, of the competition, aren't they? Where if you can get through against Crewe, you might end up with a non-league team as they did last year in the 2nd round. If you can get over those hard yards, you know what might be waiting for you come sort of January the 3rd, 4th, whatever it is, when 3rd round weekend comes around.
Absolutely, yeah. Just going back to the kind of team selection then. So one area we've not mentioned is obviously the right back quandary, and we're recording this show before Grant's presser. So obviously we'll get an update on Sterry and Nixon. But obviously last weekend, how did you think Green did? And I guess they've got options, haven't they, at that right back? Reardon's played there. Clifton, though he's injured, but can play there. Gotts. So there's plenty of players that can fill in at right back. But I guess it'll be nice when one of the recognised duo returns properly. Yeah,
well, and I think the hope is that Nixon and Sterry aren't a million miles away. But in the meantime, Sean Green, I think, did a really good job on Saturday, particularly defensively. I think you can see a little bit of caught in between in terms of his mindset when he's getting forward, because he's naturally a defender, isn't he? So he's always thinking about what's behind me. So whereas Sterry and Nixon perhaps would be bombing on and getting round the side of Molineux. So you could see it was a bit stick or twist a little bit with him at times, although he did get forward and had a part to play in the opener, didn't he? It was a big header at the back post that forced the first save, and then a bit of a sort of a goalmouth scramble before Sharp put it away. But I think he was very solid. There were occasions where he stepped into the space and tried to make things happen. So he's been a very capable sort of stand-in. I'm sure he'll be keen to get in at centre half once everybody's back fit. But yeah, he's not let anybody down. And away from home as well, it's a big wide open pitch at Reading, so a lot of ground to cover as a right back. And I think Grant had said that about him the week before. People might not associate a lot more running in terms of you're a defender, so what do you need to do, sort of thing. But he's at centre half, he's almost running around the same area of the pitch, isn't he, constantly? Whereas you move to right back and you've got to get up and down, especially in the modern game. You're expected to do as much attacking as you are defending, aren't you? So I think it is a challenge for him, but one that he's taken to quite nicely. And I think under the radar as well.